Good morning. My name is Steve Jenner. I'm the Associate Director for the Bureau of Indian Affairs Office of Justice Services. I'm an enrolled Tlingit Haida and descendant of the Blackfeet Nation of Montana. Welcome to the 30th Annual Indian Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Ceremony. This year's ceremony is the second virtual event in the history of the memorial due to the pandemic. Thank you for joining us online. The Indian Country Law Enforcement Officers Memorial honors tribal, state, local, and federal law enforcement officers working on federal Indian lands and in tribal communities who have made the supreme sacrifice in the line of duty. It is a solemn occasion when the names of the officers who will be added to the memorial at the Academy are formally announced. Please join me in standing. For staff that are in attendance, please rise for the flag song.
Do you want the flag song or honor song?
Honor song.
Honor song.
Yeah.
Pehena mita wayero tokana miecha na kenona wa oh hey ya ha hey ya ha ya 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 hey ya ya hey ya ya hey ya ya hey ya ha ya hey ya ha ne kawa kepesh neyedo dako ote kekero woku kepehena mita wayero tokana miecha na kenona wa oh hey ya ha hey ya ha ya 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 hey ya ya Dako ote hekero woku kepehena mita wayero tokana miecha na kenona wa hey ya ha hey ya ha oi.
Please remain standing for the invocation.
Gwadzi, Doshana Meshrama Taitsa, Shashka Washti, Mina Hano, Dani Hano, Naya, Naishtia, Zayayu, Dawa, Mayuna, Zi, Datane, Gume, Dawa, Hushtai Me, fallen soldiers, fallen officers, Gaime, Da, Hushtai Me, Gume, Na Chama. Naya, Naishtia, Zayayu, guide and protect, Hushtai Me, Gume. Ditani, Husht, Aita, Huti, Hina, Dawa,
Thank you. You may be seated. I'm going to thank the cadets from the police class and from the correction class for the honor song and for the invocation. Each year we are humbled to honor these officers enshrined on the memorial. The additional officers that we recognize today will mark a total of 129 officers who have given the supreme sacrifice in any country. The memorial is held annually the first Thursday in May at the United States Indian Police Academy on the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center here in Artesia, New Mexico. The memorial was first dedicated on May 7th, 1992 at the BIA Indian Police Academy, then located in Marana, Arizona. The earliest name is inscribed, dates back to 1852. The memorial includes one female officer from the Navajo Nation and a father and a son who died in 1998 and 2001 respectively. This year we add to the memorial Sergeant Mark Dreyer of the Arizona Department of Public Safety and Officer James Hughes, the Kalispell Tribal Police Department. This ceremony honors their sacrifice and it honors their family and departments. I'm honored to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Director Jason O'Neill of the BIA Office of Justice Services. Director O'Neill is a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, and he has served throughout Indian country as a police officer, supervisory police officer, tribal chief of police, special agent in charge, the deputy associate director, the assistant director, and currently the director for the BIA Office of Justice Services. Please join me in welcoming Director O'Neill.
Good morning. First, I want to express my sincere appreciation to the staff of the United States Indian Police Academy for all their hard work in setting up this virtual 30th Annual Indian Country Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Program to honor tribal, state, local, and federal law enforcement officers working on federal lands and in tribal communities who have given their lives in the line of duty. It's an honor to be here today in the presence of this law enforcement family and the loved ones of those who have gone on before us. My name is Jason O'Neill, and I'm a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. I am also the Director for the Bureau of Indian Affairs Office of Justice Services. As a 27-year veteran law enforcement officer, I am comforted by the fact that I belong to a law enforcement extended family. A family made up of individuals like the families who have so graciously gathered with us today for this memorial service. A law enforcement officer's job is a challenging one. A law enforcement officer's integrity and character must be beyond reproach. Honoring the public's trust and having the courage to maintain the highest ethical standards are expected. Upholding the values of our communities and our agencies are the foundation of that trust. Law enforcement officers are frequently required to work in high-risk situations, engaging in high-speed pursuits, and confronting potentially violent individuals. Policing is a stressful profession that often includes long shifts, interactions with people in trouble or crisis, as well as exposure to high stress and occasionally life-threatening environments. I understand how hard this must be, and my heart goes out to you all. No speech, no flag, and no memorial can replace the person in your life who went to work one day as a law enforcement officer and did not return. Today we honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice and those they left behind. Each of you understand the gravity of the decision your loved one made every day to serve and protect our communities. There is much honor in serving in a public safety position and, unfortunately, much risk. Paul Harvey once spoke about the composite of a law enforcement officer. He highlighted how instances of brutality or dishonesty became highlights in the news media. He went on to explain that what this really meant were that these instances were exceptional, unusual, and not commonplace. He quoted a statistic that highlighted that less than 0.5% of law enforcement officers misfit the uniform. Today we read the names of those we lost to acknowledge their sacrifice. We say their names to keep them alive in our hearts and ensure the sacrifice they made is not forgotten. Many of you knew them as husbands, wives, children, siblings, friends, or fellow officers. To our families, I extend to you my deepest heartfelt sympathy for your loss, and I offer you and your family our most sincere condolences on behalf of the Bureau of Indian Affairs Office of Justice Services. It is said that love is stronger than death, and that there can be no greater love than to sacrifice oneself for the sake of others. The men and women we remember today did exactly that. They laid down their lives for their communities. I am very proud to have these other guests attend our virtual ceremony today. Keynote Speaker, the Honorable U.S. Interior Secretary Deb Holland. Bill Dinke, Chief of Police, Sequan Band of Mission Indians, California, and Chairman of the Indian Country Law Enforcement Section for the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Joseph Wright, FLETC Site Director. And finally, the hundreds of BIA and tribal law enforcement staff across the country who serve and protect our communities. It's my pleasure to now hand this back over to Associate Director Stephen Juneau, the gentleman responsible for planning the 30th Annual Indian Country Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Program event.
Thank you, Director O'Neill. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Bill Dinke. He's a lifelong Indian Country law enforcement officer. He's chairman of the Indian Country section of the International Association of Chiefs of Police and is the Chief of Police at Sequan Tribal Police Department in California. Please join me in welcoming Chief Dinke.
Good day, everyone, and a special greetings to the family, friends, and colleagues of Officer James Hughes and Sergeant Mark Dreyer. As the Chief of Police for the Sequan Band of the Kumeyaay Nation and the Chairman of the International Association of Chiefs of Police Indian Country Section, it's an absolute honor to be given the opportunity to say a few words here today. Every year, the Indian Country Section of IACP selects an Officer of the Year and celebrates that officer in an honor banquet at our mid-year meeting. Just a few weeks ago, we honored 2 Gila River police officers for their valiant actions while taking an armed felon into custody who was actively shooting at a female victim. I'd like to take just a moment to go back a few years. And yes, I know a number of you have heard me say this before, but it will always bear repeating because it puts light on the inherent danger of policing, especially in Indian country. In 2016, Navajo police officer Houston Largo was honored by the section as an Officer of the Year for his courageous actions during a gun battle on the Navajo reservation. Just about 1 year later, Officer Largo responded to a domestic violence incident on the Navajo reservation as a single officer. And if my memory serves me correctly, his cover officer was over 30 miles away. Officer Houston Largo wasn't out of his car long before he was shot in the head and killed by the domestic violence suspect. Officer Largo was 27 years old. The inherent danger. By speaking from the memorial grounds right now, I'd simply point to all the 129 names carved into stone who paid the ultimate sacrifice in effort to protect their respective communities. I would also like to add the fact that violence against police officers right now in our country is at an unprecedented high. According to the FBI, 73 law enforcement officers were murdered in the line of duty in 2021 through means such as being ambushed, or being shot while out on patrol, a 59% increase from the previous year. The first quarter of this year, or this calendar year, has seen an increase of police officers being shot at a rate of 43% over the previous year. Unfortunately, it's not just the physical violence that's hurting and even killing our police officers. There's something else that's rarely mentioned, something that's hardly ever mentioned on the news or social media, more of a silent killer. Every shift, police officers put their uniforms on, gear up, jump into their patrol vehicles, and start responding to calls for service. Often encountering people on the worst days of their lives. It could be a hostile domestic violence incident, a youth suicide, a failed traffic collision, a violent sexual assault, a report of a missing loved one at risk. Unfortunately, we in law enforcement all know this list goes on and on and on. These officers deal with intense stress every day, day in and day out. At the end of their shifts, they're just kind of expected to leave it all behind in their locker, like their uniform or other equipment, and go home and be wife, husband, mom, dad, son, daughter, friend. Sometimes their home lives may be just as stressful. Messy divorce, child custody issue, or even a death of an immediate family member. Then they're expected to go back to work and make split-second decisions, sometimes of life and death. With that being said, we need to do more to recognize this and talk about it. We need to promote and make sure our officers serving our tribal communities so courageously don't look at asking for help as a sign of weakness. In closing, I'd like to thank Associate Director Steve Juneau for his tireless work in putting this amazing ceremony together year in and year out, and for all his leadership throughout the years at the Indian Police Academy. I also like to wish peace to all the family members, friends, and colleagues, Sergeant Mark Dreyer and Officer James Hughes. And to all the active duty law enforcement officers out there, stay safe and be well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Dinke. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Joseph W. Wright, known to all of us as Woody Wright. He is the acting site director for the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center here in Artesia, New Mexico. Mr. Wright has over 50 years of law enforcement experience, serving in critical positions from detention officer to undercover narcotics, and with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center as an instructor, a division chief, a director, and site director, assistant director, and chief of staff. Well known to any country, Mr. Wright also served as director for the United States Indian Police Academy from 1991 to 1999. Please join me in welcoming Director Wright.
Thank you, Associate Director Juneau. Good morning. On behalf of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center's Director, Thomas J. Walters, I want to welcome you to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, Artesia, New Mexico, and the 30th Annual Indian Country Law Enforcement Memorial Service. Today, we gather to recognize those who have made this ultimate sacrifice in Indian Country. Since the establishment of this memorial in May of 1992 at the FLETC in Marana, Arizona, the FLETC has had the honor of hosting and caring for this sacred site. Each morning since its erection in Marana, basic police trainees have gathered to post the colors and to pay respect to those whose names are inscribed upon these granite stones. By doing this, they are reminded of the commitment and sacrifice they are making to their communities and Indian Country. It's with heavy hearts we add two names to the memorial this year: Sergeant Mark Dreyer of the Arizona Department of Public Safety and Officer Robert Hughes of Kalispell Tribal Police Department in Washington State. Our deepest sympathies and prayers go out to the families and loved ones who have traveled here today for this ceremony or who are watching virtually. And we thank you for the blessing to our communities and country with your loved one, and with the service and sacrifice of not only them, but each of you who supported them. I would be remiss if I did not recognize those who had the foresight and commitment to establishing this memorial 30 years ago this month. Ted Quasula, the retired director of BIA Law Enforcement Services; Benediction, the retired deputy director of Law Enforcement Services; Ed Reyna, chief of police, retired; Danny Brenninger, retired criminal investigator and director of the Indian Police Academy; Jim Mulash, retired criminal investigator as well. But I want to say a special thank you to two of the guests that are here today. First one is Steffi Nolan, who's sitting in the front. Steffi was with us when we purchased the original center stone and helped us set it in Marana, Arizona. She took time to move it and was part of the moving of the academy to Artesia and has been with us forever since. So I wanted to say a special thank to her. The other one is to Tom Woolworth, retired director of the Indian Police Academy. Tom was our first sergeant that was at the site and helped set the stone as well. Without them, you would not be seeing today's events. These individuals had the foresight and the fortitude to stay with and fight for us as we put this together to honor these men and women who made this ultimate sacrifice in Indian country. Again, I want to thank you for coming today and to watching virtually and allowing the FLETC to host you for this event. May God bless each of you.
Thank you, Director Wright. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, the Honorable Secretary Deb Holland. For the Department of Interior, Secretary Holland was one of the first Native American women to serve in Congress and is the first Native American to serve as a cabinet secretary. Secretary Holland is a member of the Pueblo of Laguna, and we are honored to introduce her as our keynote speaker.
Hi everyone, I'm Secretary Deb Holland and a proud member of the Pueblo of Laguna. I'm honored to join the Indian Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Ceremony from the ancestral homelands of the Anacostan and Piscataway people. Indian country law enforcement professionals play an important role supporting tribal sovereignty, protecting cultural traditions, and upholding our responsibilities to tribal nations. Each officer is vital to fulfilling our promises and carries the responsibility to ensure Indigenous people feel safe in their communities. In particular, I'm grateful for the work BIA and tribal law enforcement professionals do to address missing and murdered Indigenous peoples cases. It's an issue that is close to my heart and is a priority for me as Secretary. I know that you carry a heavy load, and we're working on getting more resources so that members of our communities no longer go missing without a trace. During this ceremony, we remember the law enforcement officers who gave the ultimate sacrifice serving their communities. We must recognize that every day our law enforcement officers put themselves at risk to keep tribal communities safe, and that their families share their loved ones with us at great risk as well. As we honor those we have lost, we remember the incredible courage these individuals demonstrated and the commitment to service law enforcement officers carry with them each and every day. Every person is more than the job that they do. It's important to remember the good times you shared with each other, the challenges you overcame together, and to carry their light with you into the future. And to the families who sacrificed right alongside our officers, thank you. The service of families alongside their loved ones is something I cherish deeply. My mom would always credit me and my siblings for serving alongside my dad when he was overseas in Vietnam. Almost every night, we'd sit at the kitchen table to write letters. Deep down, she knew he wasn't guaranteed to return home. The hardships were carried by all of us. Our family was lucky that he did return. I thank the families who are with us for supporting all of our law enforcement professionals, as they get up and go to work and do a tough job every single day. My heart is with you all as we honor the memories of those we have lost and show gratitude to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Holland. We'll now read the names of the officers memorialized today. The Academy staff and instructors will place a flower at the memorial as the officers' names are called. Sergeant Mark Dreyer, Arizona Department of Public Safety, end of watch 0703 of 1993. Sergeant Dreyer was conducting a traffic stop when he was struck by an intoxicated driver on I-10 on the Gila River Indian Community in Arizona. Sergeant Dreyer was a United States Navy veteran who had served with the Arizona Department of Public Safety for 12 years. He had previously served as a police officer in Texas. Officer James Robert Hughes, Kalispell Tribal Police Department, end of watch 1/6 of 2021. Officer Hughes suffered a heart attack while effecting an arrest of a resisting subject involved in a physical altercation. Officer Hughes had served with the Kalispell Tribal Police Department for 4.5 years and had previously served with the Spokane County Sheriff's Office for 40 years. He served as a volunteer firefighter for the Spokane County Fire District. We will now have the gun salute by the United States Indian Police Academy, followed by taps and the benediction. Thank you. Taps was played by our partners at the New Mexico Military Institute. We very much appreciate that. Please stand for the benediction.
Naya, Naishia, Zayayu. Dawa for the officer's sacrifice. Gaime protect them as they travel home. Not chama. It's not guaranteed. Dawa for continuing to guide and protect their families in these hard times. Continue to watch over all of the officers and law enforcement. Gaime protect them. Tell them, hush daime gume. Continue to protect lieutenants, secretaries, cadets as they make this sacrifice each and every day. Na chama isn't guaranteed. Continue to protect them. Give them the strength that you have each and every day. Show them you love them and protect them. Give the family the strength to heal. But Gaime protect everyone who is in this world. We are never given the time of day when we may leave. But you, Naya, Naishtia, have the will and the power to protect them every day. Hina, tawa.
May I take your seats? The Academy will provide the families with a memorial plaque and the blanket as a symbol of our honoring of their family member. I want to thank the United States Indian Police Academy staff and instructors for all of their hard work to make sure that this ceremony happens. There was a significant amount of coordination that had to be done that they're really responsible for and do a terrific job every year. I want to thank the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, our partners for over 35 years, the New Mexico Military Institute, and our guest speakers. To all the families, every training week, cadets of the United States Indian Police Academy bear the distinct honor of paying tribute to these officers on the memorial in recognition of their supreme sacrifice. Cadets march to the memorial for a moment of silence. They render a salute and they file past the memorial. Your loved ones will always be honored here, every day, every week, and every year. We are always here. This concludes this year's ceremony. Thank you very much.